Hello everyone, I hope you are doing alright and welcome back to the project. So today, as we discussed last time, I'm gonna add VFX, so smoke and fire to this scene and then do the final render. Okay, so to start, what I'm doing here is a copy of the elements from the sets I would need for that part. So mainly the walls, the launch pad, and also the spaceship. Okay. I'm duplicating this object and placing them in their own collection. So then from now, I'm just gonna apply the modifiers that are already on this object and then add a modifier which is called remesh. Okay, this allows me to remesh the geometry from this object to usually a much lower resolution object, because as I'm gonna use them as a collider for my simulation, you want them to be as simple as you can, because otherwise the more complex they are, the longer the simulation will take. Okay? So now I'm just separating two objects, the two faces from the spaceships that will be the source of my fire. Okay, these just two round shapes. And now I'm just closing the doors. Okay, when the simulation will take place, the space will be closed. So this is the state I want my object to be in. Okay, so now you can see me adding the modifier, choosing the block option, okay, so that my object will be as low as possible. You can also, in the viewport, activate the statistics, okay, so that you can see what is the effect in terms of geometry on the settings you are using, okay. Remember, there is a checkbox here that is called remove disconnected. Okay, if there is an object in two parts, you need to uncheck that to keep the two parts. So now that I'm done with all of them, what I'm gonna do is add the VFX. Okay, so I'm using the menu object, quick effect, and then quick smoke. And then at this time, if you play the animation, you will see that smokes is rising from the two objects that are supposed to be at the back of my spaceship engine. But of course, these are subject to gravity, so it's going up. What I need to do is change the velocity, the starting velocity, with the direction going towards the minus z, so toward the bottom. And now that I've done that, you can see that the fire and smoke is going down. Then modifying my domain, because all the simulation takes place within this cube that you can see here. I'm gonna leave a link if you want to know more about that from a previous lesson that I did, okay, about VFX. Now you can see the fire is big and going towards the bottom. That's exactly what I wanted to get. Okay, so now I'm resizing the domain box to fit the entire size of my scene, okay, where it's supposed to be simulated. I'm applying all the remesh modifiers to the object, so then I can add a collision state in the physics tab to them, so that they will collide with the particles from the fire, okay, the voxels. And now, because the smoke from the fire wasn't enough, I wanted the space to be filled with smoke. What I'm gonna add is just a simple plane, turn toward the outside of this hole for the engine's fire, okay? And I want this to also emit smoke. You can see it's emitting smoke, but the smoke is going towards where the fire is. I think the fact that the air is hot there, it just attracts the smoke towards this direction. So what I'm doing is adding an empty and adding to it a force, which is called wind, okay, so that it will just blow the smoke from this object toward the outside, and I'm also adding another one which I set to turbulence, okay, so that the smoke is just going all over the place, not in a straight direction as you could see before. Now it has a different shape to it. Okay, so now that I have that, I'm just setting up the simulation to be baked. Okay, so that's at the end. Once it is baked, you can see here I can duplicate my original object and still have the simulation running, because both objects are using the same source, so I don't have to recalculate the simulation. Why I wanted to do that? It was to have it in the collection that is duplicated, so I wouldn't have to change the direction of it. But of course, this doesn't work. So I had to duplicate the original domain and then do all the positioning and rotation for it to fit the way the entire set is rotated. Okay, so here you can see it. I'm gonna refer to the same link I used before for the materials, okay, because I want this to have a specific look. I'm adding a volume info node, then a color ramp, and also a math in multiply mode, okay, to change the aspects of the fire here. And I'm also gonna add a map range node at the beginning, just so that we can select where there is fire and where there isn't, where it's just smoke. Okay, using that. And then you can see a bit of the effect it has. Okay, then after having seen that, I wanted to have even more smoke, so what I did is I added a particle system to my plane, okay, and I just set it up so that the particles will go a bit all over the place around the set, okay, the launch pad, and now I'm just adjusting my particle system so that it just behave like it was smoke going out from the engine, okay. And now what you can do when you set an object as a smoke emitter, okay, is to change the parameter from the flow source to be not only the original object but the particle systems. So every particle from my particle systems now emits smokes, okay. So with that I will have a lot more smoke, okay. So I'm just testing out a few parameters to not have them go all over the place. And this is about what I get, and I think that's pretty nice, okay. And the great thing about what I did was that, remember when I duplicated the domain before, now the one that is rotated and positioned to fit my scene is always gonna use the same source for the baked data, so I don't have to do it or change it anymore. It's like almost a duplicated linked object from my original domain, okay. So what I'm gonna do now is to try to do like renders but with a small size to just see if everything is okay. Now you can see what it is looking like, okay. There is quite a lot of smoke now, but what I did during the render was to check a bit of footage from a rocket launch, and I found out that the smoke is not really dark, it's more like a gray-white, so I just changed the color of my smoke here. And the next step would be of course to adjust the things in the scene, okay, like the lights that I had at the bottom below my engine, and I'm now gonna animate a few things. So I wanted to have like a red light showing this kind of alerts you got in some places. You just say alert, alert, don't go in this area, there is a spaceship launching very soon. Now I'm also adjusting and animating the doors that are supposed to be closing during the animation, okay. And of course something that I should maybe have done at the beginning is also the animation of the spaceship that is just taking off. Okay, because of that, now I have to change the simulation again, because of course what is emitting the fire and the smoke from the engine is supposed to follow the spaceship. Okay, so I've just parented them to the spaceship, okay, to just move up as the spaceship is going up, and now I'm just calculating the simulation again, okay, which is not too long, because once all the parameters are set, you just have to free the bake and then to launch it again. Blender is doing all the rest very efficiently, so I just had to bake it once again without having to worry about the rotation and all the things that we talked about so far. Okay, so I animated the lights turning on and off with the engines, the fire going up, the doors, the lights, and I think now that everything is done, I've also added in the end a bit of atmosphere with a smoke object all around my scene, okay, to make the background just a bit lighter. And I have to admit that afterwards, something I should maybe have done, which would have been better, is to render 3 separate objects, like the set, the VFX separately, and then the spaceship separately. So I could have modified something without having to re-render everything, because of course, if you do it yourself, you will find out that rendering a lot of VFX is quite time consuming. It's taking a lot of time to render all of this. So now that the render is done, here is the final result. Okay, kinda like it, of course. Who wouldn't? I mean, it's not a very pro-grade animation and all, but that's not the point here. You know that the goal here is still to do something achievable by beginners or people who knows a bit about the software, to show you that with a bit of effort and a bit of time, you will also manage to get something similar. So the next step, as we did earlier with the scene, the guy and the burger, is to do a bit of compositing for the images. So I'm doing the setup I did with an image editor set as a viewer node, and the other one set for the render result. Of course, remember, I need to do one little render for something to be displayed in the render results window. Okay, so that is what I did now. And of course, I have 2 images that I can use to compare the before and the after. So let's start with the exposure node, okay, to make things a bit brighter, to expose for the not dark areas but the mid-tone areas, okay. Then something to adjust the contrast, because I want some darks to be very dark, of course. Then my usual RGB curve to add this kind of bluish tone to the shadows. And I'm also adding, of course, a color balance node to add this kind of reddish tone to the highlights. Okay, this is something I usually do because that's what I like and nothing else really. Okay, so now it's time for a glare node. Okay, and I've still kept it as a streak. Okay, you can see using a bit of the parameters, you can go from something that looks clearly digital to something that could kind of be considered as a kind of nice effect. Now I'm just setting one as a fog glow, of course, for the brightest part of the image, like the engine, of course. And then the last one I'm gonna add is a lens distortion node. Okay, adding a bit of distortion. This is a bit too much, so I'm just gonna reduce it using the fit option, and then kinda copying the values from the distortion to the dispersion. Okay, so now you can see the result here. And of course, one last thing was the ellipse mask to do some kind of vignette effects. Okay, I'm just using it like this to set up the size of the circle, but that's not the way I'm gonna end up using it. Okay, now I have this, using a blur node to blur all the edges, and then I'm combining it with a mixed node in darker mode, making sure the ellipse is connected to the second entry of this node. Now I can set up my vignette effects. Okay, and I think now comparing the two outputs, it's of course much more better. And as usual, I started a render, and then of course be sure to check it a bit sometimes, but because I forgot to connect what I did to the composite node, which is where everything is gonna be rendered. If it's not connected to this, I'm not gonna render that, but just re-render the original set of images. So don't forget about that. I'm launching another render, and some other mistake you will see me doing is that I didn't set up the end frame to be the end frame of the animation. It's 120 frames, and of course it was by default to 250. So remember to adjust that. And of course, now the final results of the plane taking off with all the effects. I have to say I was planning on doing something even more complex and advanced, let's say, and I wasn't really sure with what I did that I would get that effect or something good, but I kinda like it. It's still simple, as I explained earlier, and of course I could do much better, but let's say for something done in a couple of hours, it's still alright, and I hope you will also yourself be proud of what you're doing. Doesn't matter if it doesn't match very pro level yet. That's the important word, it's yet. Keep on training, keep on creating worlds, and of course eventually with all of them you'll get better and you'll reach this target that you have set for yourself. Okay, so have a great week everyone. I'll see you next time for the sculpting basics. Okay, and take care. Bye.